The only thing echoing in the room was the camera lenses buzzing under the heat of carefully calibrated spotlights. A live broadcast watched around the country with huge ratings, and tonight the entire team was focused on one goal: beating Donald J. Trump on stage. Andrea Miller is one of the most watched left-leaning news anchors in the country. Questions were lined up in red on the table in front of her. Each one had been chosen word for word, with hours of rehearsal and consultant approval. But that wasn't the real reason for the confidence in Andrea's gaze. She was certain that tonight she would trend on social media as the woman who silenced Trump. Donald Trump hadn't arrived at the broadcasting building in a limousine. He had walked into the studio like a former politician, a real businessman. Black suit, red tie, and a simple smile. There were no consultants, no bodyguards, just himself and his voice. In the makeup room before the broadcast, when an assistant came and offered her a glass of water, she smiled. "Just keep the lights down a little, let them look me in the eye." Andrea hesitated for a moment when Trump entered the studio, but that feeling was immediately suppressed. Tonight was her night. She was prepared, and it was about to begin. Andrea smiled as the camera flashed. "Dear viewers, tonight we have an undisputed figure among us, the most controversial figure in the business world, former President Donald Trump." Trump nodded slightly. His eyes were determined. Andrea moved on to the first question, the innocent smile on her face deepening. "Mr. Trump, everyone knows that you have built a great business empire, but some say that this empire is just appearance. Is it real success or a media illusion?" Not a single person in the audience dared to breathe. Trump waited. His eyes dropped to Andrea's notes for a moment. Then he turned to the audience. "Is it just appearances? Let's look at it together." His voice was neither loud nor quiet, but what it carried was clear: weight. Can illusion sustain a brand for 40 years? Can illusion keep thousands of employees safe on their payday? Can illusion change the New York skyline? Andrea tried to re-enter the question. "But sir, there are failures in this empire. Bankruptcies, controversial brands, Trump Steaks, Trump University." Trump smiled slightly. "True, and they all taught me this lesson. Success is not always winning, but learning from every defeat and getting back up again." Andrea was not used to Trump being so calm. As the questions got tougher, he should have gotten more nervous, but the opposite happened. Trump was no longer speaking to the studio, but to the Americans behind the cameras. "When I was a kid, my father started me with a small amount of money, but I was the one who praised that money to the skies. When no bank would give me a loan, I learned to fight with what I had. Today, people don't look for the successful, they look for the struggling. I am that struggle." Some of the audience in the studio started shaking their heads. The host Andrea noticed this and she was furious inside, but her face was still smiling. Andrea opened a new file. "Mr. Trump, you just mentioned your brand, but some say that behind this brand there are hundreds of lawsuits, employee complaints, financial manipulations." Trump nodded. "Because some people don't know what it means to succeed." The camera zoomed in on Trump's face. "They sued me because I was strong. They criticized me because I was visible. But I never did one thing. I didn't hide the truth." Andrea got nervous. It was no longer a program, it was a challenge. "Really?" he said. "So the Trump brand is 100% transparent?" Trump leaned in. His words were clear. "Do you know what my business model is, Andrea? It's not transparency, it's visibility. Everything I've done it in public. Whether you like it or not, I'm the mirror of America. Part of me is proud of me, part of me doesn't want to see himself in that mirror." Andrea sternly tried to stop Trump from scoring with the public. "If you're so visible, why are you still shying away from your tax records?" Trump replied without looking at his notes. "Tax records? Great. Let's look at your channel's financial connections together. Which one of us do you think is more transparent?" The host's face suddenly tensed up. The producer in the studio was whispering through his headset, warning them to go to commercial break. But Andrea continued, and then he made his biggest mistake. Andrea made one last move. She softened her voice but kept the sting hidden inside. "Mr. Trump, do you think with such a controversial past, do people still respect you as a businessman?" The studio went cold. Trump thought for a moment. Then he leaned forward slightly, adjusted the microphone. "Respect? I touched their lives, gave them jobs, helped them start families. My past built their future. Those who don't want to respect me should first look in the mirror." And the camera caught a flash of fire in Trump's eyes. Andrea's eyes widened in fear for a moment. The air in the studio had cooled, but not from the air conditioners. The incident had now gone beyond a program. It had become a psychological battle for supremacy. Andrea Miller was sitting at her desk, trying to maintain a fake smile on the corner of her lips. She put her hand on her notes to suppress the feeling of panic that was blowing like a storm inside her. But the notes were no longer useful. Trump had gone beyond the text, had rewritten the play. The director warned again through the headset. "Andrea, pull it together. Show that you are in control. Go back to the past file. Use the reports." Andrea nodded with a short sigh. She put her hands under the table and clenched them into fists. She had to win this interview again. Andrea opened another folder. Inside were events that the media called Trump's dark business history: offshore account allegations, tax strategies, statements from former employees. "Mr. Trump, you gave very impressive answers. However, some questions about your past are still not clear. For example, the allegations regarding the Miami project after 2008. Trump bowed his head slightly. "Ah, Miami. The story of that project is beautiful. If you want, I can tell it." Andrea frowned. This was not the reaction she expected. Trump continued. "I was there in the middle of the crisis, when everyone else was running away. Many investors withdrew. I stayed. 700 people worked on that project. 700 families received salaries, and that building is still standing today. So where were you then, Andrea?" Andrea tried to steady her voice. "Of course, you are proud of your projects, but some documents claim that there are suspicious sources of finance behind these projects, especially—" Trump interrupted. "Alleged. Great word. The press's favorite refuge. Whenever there's no truth, they say alleged. But let's play. Show me the document." Andrea pulled out the document from the folder, but Trump spoke before her. "Let me explain it to everyone watching the broadcast. This document is a summary of a commercial loan application made in 2010, and everything in it is publicly available. But you took it and presented it as secret document. Do you think this is journalism, Andrea?" Andrea avoided eye contact for the first time. Meanwhile, tensions were high in the studio control room. Producer Marcus whispered in Andrea's ear, "Plan is not working. Go to plan B, personal space, Melania question, or the children." Andrea closed her eyes. She paused for a moment. If she wasn't going to win, she had to shake Trump up on personal space. "Mr. Trump, your career may be impressive, but some people say that your business success is only due to your last name, and those closest to you, your family, are crushed in your shadow. Let's talk about Melania, about your children. Do you think this life is really a success story for them? Or are they lives lost under your glory?" The room was silent. Trump slowly straightened up. He was no longer an ordinary guest, but rather a speech at the podium. Without raising his voice, he spoke his words clearly and sharply. "My family is my greatest achievement. Melania is a strong woman. She does not live in the shadow. She may not prefer the light, but her presence shines like a star. And my children, they carry their father's path, not his burden. I did not leave them a fortune. I left them a character." Andrea was silent. His plan had backfired. Trump had set the trap. At that very moment, another producer connected to director Marcus's earpiece. "Marcus, bad news. Trump's team requested studio protocol records before going on air. It has been documented that the studio targeted Trump with fabricated questions." "What are you saying?" "Also, someone on Andrea's team corresponded with another source to produce fake documents about Trump. Trump may have copies of these conversations." Panic was beginning to set in the studio. but from the outside it still looked like a professional broadcast. Only the dullness in Andrea's eyes indicated that something was wrong. Trump started talking again, but this time he was not speaking directly to Andrea but to the camera. "I came here today as a businessman, but I realized my hosts want to sell fictional stories, not the truth." Trump pulled out a piece of paper from inside his jacket. It contained documents regarding broadcast protocol. "This is the internal correspondence that shows how this network is preparing to trap me. The order of the questions, the documents that were not given to me, even the names of Andrea's special advisors." Andrea banged the table this time. "This private document, how do you get them? This is against the law." Trump leaned back. "Public speakers should not keep secret documents from the public. Since you asked questions, now it's my turn." Something changed in the studio at that moment. The expressions on the audience's faces changed from being spectators to... He had started to hold shelves. A group of young men and women were shaking their heads. A man lowered his glasses and whispered, "There is no lie in what the man says. When have these people ever been truly honest?" Andrea noticed this psychological turn. He clasped his hands, but it was too late now. Trump ended the second part with one last sentence. "The buildings I build may wear out over time, but the trust I built did not collapse in this studio. While you build your lies, I defend the truth." Andrea fell silent, not knowing what to say. The director shouted the order for a commercial break, but according to the audience, the program had already ended. Trump stood up. As he passed the table, he turned to Andrea. "People are watching you. But now they will ask themselves why they are watching you." Everyone in the studio was silent. Andrea had her hands clasped tightly on her knees. The lipstick on her lips had faded. The tension on her face had begun to penetrate the makeup. The cameras were still on, but no one noticed, because everyone was looking at only one person, Donald J. Trump. In the studio, it was no longer a broadcast, but a moment of history. Trump sat back down at his desk. The director scrambled for a commercial break, but Trump raised his hand. "Number, it's not over. These people came tonight for answers, and I will not let them go unanswered." Andrea turned with a look of exhaustion in her eyes. "Mr. Trump, is this a personal reckoning for you?" Trump turned not to her but to the camera. "No. This is a collective awakening. I came here today to speak on my own behalf, but now I realize I have become the voice of millions." Trump pulled another folder from his jacket. These were documents that were previously published on Andrea's channel and that allegedly contained deliberately distorted news. "This document contains an analysis of 14 news stories you have presented in the past year. 11 of the 14 were based on false sources, 3 were manipulated by editorial intervention, and all of them have one goal: destroy character, career, family, reputation, and it doesn't matter as long as it is destroyed." Andrea got defensive. "But our job is to ask questions, question power, balancing authority." Trump smiled. "No, Andrea, you are not questioning the truth. You are directing the truth." Trump stood up. This was no longer an interview, but a speech. The spotlights flickered in the background, the cameramen were sweating. But Trump's voice was steady, strong, unwavering. "America is not a building. America is not a campaign. America is an idea, a principle. And that idea says, above all else, stand up for what's right, even when everyone else is wrong. My business is not just about skyscrapers. My business was about building hope, to make sure a young man could turn to his father and say, 'I can do it too.' But the media is trying to stifle that hope. You don't build hope, you make stories out of rubble." Andrea's head dropped. She was looking at her notes on the table, but not a single line made sense anymore. Trump's words had reached not only the screens, but also her conscience. Several viewers in the studio stood up. They began to applaud. But it wasn't the TV applause we're used to. It was an expression of awareness. Andrea raised her eyes. Her eyes were filled with tears. But she wasn't crying. He just whispered, "Maybe you're right." Trump turned to him. I'm not trying to be right. I'm talking to show the truth. And sometimes that truth hurts. Trump turned back to the camera. Millions are watching us now, and maybe many of them don't care what I say. But I said something today that they won't forget. Success is not just about winning, it's about standing. I've lost everything, but I never bowed, and if that inspires you, then you're not alone. There may be those who want to silence us, but we will continue to speak, because the spirit of America is the spirit of stepping back. Trump sat back in his chair silently. Andrea bowed her head. Another round of applause began. The cameraman working on the broadcast shook his head with the weariness of years. For the first time, something felt real. The day after the program, Andrea Miller's name was trending on social media, not in the news, but this time not as a success. After the broadcast, the channel was forced to publicly apologize due to leaked internal correspondence, fake documents, and manipulation tactics. Andrea did not appear on the air a week later. At that time, Trump's live-streamed remarks had reached billions of views on YouTube. Many people had written his speech on the walls of their homes. Success is a matter of posture, and true leadership is speaking when everyone else is silent. The story began with a media conflict, but now it went much deeper, building, defending, standing. Trump had not only defended his past, he had represented the values of a country, the aspirations of a fragile society. Andrea fell silent, but where he remained silent, millions began to speak. This was not just an interview. This was a moment to remind us who was telling the truth. A man stood before millions, and as he was silenced, his voice resonated louder. Because the truth shines brightest when it is silenced. And today, it wasn't just the lights that shone in that studio, it was the true American spirit.